Hey guys, how's it going? Here's a little update for you. Got the shifter bracket off of my old transmission that blew up second gear. Cleaned it all up. It's ready to go. And then I'm running a stage 2 or stage 3 6-puck unsprung clutch in the car currently, and I'm thinking that could have been part of the reason why the U-joint blew out, on top of the U-joints just being crappy, shitty material. So I got this clutch net stage, I believe it's stage 2 or stage 3, but it's a 4-puck and it's sprung, so it's going to be less aggressive on the whole drivetrain. It still has a decent amount of meat left on it, still good. And then I got a new throwout bearing. Well, it's used, but it has no play and it's dead silent. It's perfect. And then when the actual U-joint blew up, when it broke the shifter bracket, it actually broke my center console. And if you guys ever have to fix interior parts, the best thing to use is shoe goo. It's flexible, it's durable, and it'll hold it all together perfectly. So now my center console's fixed. Rebent the heat shield properly back. Now I just got to repaint it. Repainted the drive shaft cobalt blue. It wasn't bent or damaged really, besides that little niche right there, but that's not really going to do anything. I put OEM U-joints inside of it. That's a U-joint off of the other drive shaft that the rear U-joint was blown on it. So I took the front U-joint and yoke off of it, repressed it into here. It's all good, balanced, ready to go. I made my own jig to balance it. And then this is the setup on the engine for right now. I pulled the slave cylinder off, moved all the fuel lines out of the way, got all the bolts off the transmission so it's ready to pull. This is actually holding up my starter. Then I went through on the inside, hammered the tranny tunnel straight as I can. When I pull the transmission, I'm gonna fix that little edge right there. Then this should be all set up. Stuck a 2x4 and a 6-pound sledgehammer and beat all that back in, so now that's all perfect. Same thing on this side. And it pushed this whole section up right here. It was a big old lump. I got it all back down. Now it's just the padding that's kind of pushed up, and this is all that insulated heat wrap I was talking about. That's 10mm. That's 5mm. And I have it doubled and tripled layer all across the firewall, floor pans. Everything is done with it. Inside here, inside the dash, the whole ducting inside the dashboard's done. The whole complete roof's all the way done except the sunroof section. Both B pillars all the way down, complete everything underneath the back seat. I mean, I went a little overboard with it, but it was definitely worth it. Everything in the back, even in the shock towers, they got a little piece. Every single inch of this car got some of it. It's kind of hard to tell, but see the reflection up inside there. It's 25 mils for the front, 15 for the middle, and then it's 25 for the front, 10 for the middle, 15 for the back. And I'm just going to go through and make it all 20, all the way around, 25 maybe, just on the bottom section of the car. That's how destroyed the shifter bracket is. That is like dunzo. Transmission seems like it might still be good because I got it into neutral and I was able to spin the U-joint, and it didn't seem like it was binding or making any clunky noises or anything crazy. I also went through and re-undercoated the spots that got damaged after I hammered it out, so now I'm just waiting for that to dry. The caps of the U-joint are still in there. Caps are good. U-joint itself was shitty. Also did this side. Didn't destroy that heat shield. Transmission, everything seems good. That's how my starter's being held up currently. There's the Excetti Stage 2 pressure plate with a 6-puck clutch disc, unsprung, which I think could have been the reason why that broke. The transmission seems like it's still good. It's in neutral right now. Can rotate it. I don't hear any clunking or grinding, so it seems like it's still good. I don't think the input shaft's bent at all either. When I pulled the speedo cable out, I'll check the gear on it. If that plastic gear is broke or bent or anything at all happened to that plastic gear, that means something happened to this actual main input shaft or output shaft. So that means the transmission is probably no good. And also looked up a few videos of how to test the play on the transmission to see if it's good, because I have a transmission in the back. I took apart, reassembled it, did all the spec testing on it with the gauge calipers, and everything seems to be good on it. There's no input shaft play or output shaft play. This one seems to have no output shaft play. When I pull from the motor, then I'll figure out if it has input shaft play, and if it does, then sad to say I'm just gonna have to set this one to the side, put an S4 transmission inside of it that won't have this sturdier bracket with 2 bolts on either side. It'll just be a single bolt bracket, but it'll still hold up. Other than that, everything's been pretty good. The only reason why the transmission hasn't been dropped, if you see the gap I'm working with here, I don't really have that much room, and the jack I currently have can only get the car high enough up in the air to get the jack stands like that. It won't even reach the transmission, and it's a tiny little jack that is 2-ton rated. It's too skinny and narrow to where I'm not even going to try to attempt to lower this transmission on it. I have a buddy that I'm still waiting on to bring a jack, but it's kind of hard to get a hold of him. I'm going to try through a few family members, see if I can borrow a decent 3-ton jack or something that's wide and it can at least reach the transmission. I'll pull it out, check it all out, and if it's good, then I'll just replace the shifter bracket and then put that clutch disc inside of it and then put it all back together. And then if the transmission is bad, and then I'm just going to swap to an S4. But later on down the road, I was looking up transmission gear kits, and I can get a Cusco 5-speed close gear ratio transmission set, but I got to run a Turbo 2 case, which I already got the conversion, and I can run NA flywheel. I already found the clutch disc that will work inside this NA flywheel and pressure plate, but it'll go to the 23-tooth turbo transmission, and then I already got the yoke for the turbo transmission, so I can run a turbo swap while still keeping an NA motor and an NA diff. I already have the fatter turbo dry shaft. You can see how much bigger this is. Let's go over here for a second. And these are your basic NA dry shafts. Look how tiny that is. The flange is like so much bigger than everything. The dry shaft's tiny. This is the one I actually took the front yoke out because this back half down here is actually like pretty blown. And like I said, if the motor or the transmission is bad, there's the one I blew up second gear and see I robbed the shifter from it. And that one back behind it is the one I went through, checked it. It was freshly rebuilt in 2012 from some transmission shop. I had to swap the bell housing out because one of the bolts were snapped off inside here. Instead of trying to drill and tap it out, I just swapped the bell housing from this one because the second gear's blown up in it. So that's why I had to swap it. Went through internals, everything seems to check out good. There is no input shaft play whatsoever. It does turn over. It's kind of stiff right now because it's dry. There is no oil in it, but it does turn over. There's no input shaft play. There's no output shaft play. So that's like my spare backup transmission. And this is the bracket I was talking about between the S4 and S5. You still got the same bolt mounts on the side. You still got the same rod in the center, but you got one bolt right here and one bolt right here that mount this whole bracket to the transmission itself. Which if one of those 12 mil snap or bend, you're shit out of luck. And you gotta swap the whole case anyways. Or on S5, they went up inside here, made this bracket come up, made the casting set up to where you had 2 bolts right here, and now you have 2 12 mils on either side. That's why I like S5 transmissions better. And that's my S5 engine that lost an oil control ring. That's an S4 engine that lost an oil control ring. They're good, they're good engines. They just need a rebuild kit. And then this is my race engine that I rebuilt, did everything in my kitchen. Everything was done by hand, no Dremel at all. But I need a programmable ECU to run this. And a little while later, just going through verifying, I might have the wrong pulley on it, because when you line up these timing marks on 2 other engines I have, I know for sure the pulley goes to that engine OEM setup and never was rebuilt. When you line up this first timing mark, you look inside the spark plug hole right here, and the rotor is completely flat against this, so it's like combustion chambers right here. When I lined up this one to that spot, look down the spark plug hole, the rotor was already down, so the flat spot was more or less down this way, so it was already passed. So I'm pretty sure the pulley, being the wrong pulley, is why the timing was out, to where I only was able to put 100 miles on it before I decided to pull it, just because it's my daily driver. I can't have something that I gotta retard the timing to get it to fire up, and then once it fires up, fully advance the timing. I have to do that each and every single time. That's not a good daily driver. It's an awesome race engine, but not for a daily driver. So that's why I thought I had to get a programmable ECU. But now after figuring out the timing situation that I was currently having, I'm going to try to get another S4 wiring harness, because I have an S4 ECU but no wiring harness, spare injectors and everything, get all the stuff set up, and then I'm going to try to start this on the floor and see if doing the timing marks like the way I've seen on this engine, plus the engine that's in my car, seeing that the way those timing marks are like the way I was talking about, and this one's the only one that's different. I'm going to try to line up these line up the rotor to where the marks are kind of where they need to be, remark the pulley to where those are the new timing marks, do the proper spacing between the two, try to fire it up, and if it starts and runs and it seems to idle properly and I don't have to mess with timing, then this is my spare backup motor, and if that engine in the car goes, this one's going right in. And then I'm going to see what a engine I built myself, done all the porting and everything, actually does. A rebuild on a rotary engine is the most simplest thing ever, especially if you have the book and just go buy all the specs, but trying to port one, do all the oil chamber or water passages mods, the oil pressure mods, try to do everything all yourself with no machining, all by hand. This is to really tell what you can do. And eventually this one's going to get a mild street port, if not a bridge port, and that one's just going to get a mild street port, and then these are going to be my backups. If you like the video, you'd like to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a good one.